looking at the escalator as my metaphor about what my concern is, because even then, when I wasn't not necessarily looking critically at my own practice, I did very much feel like the GCSE curriculum was an escalator where students would get on at the bottom, we would feed them information and facts, lots of propositional knowledge, and then they would get off at the top. Varying degrees of success at the top, other people would then get on the next escalator and go on to the next step. So very much my sort of metaphor about what I feel about the sort of science GCSE curriculum is. So that's a concern for me, or it is now. Why has it become a concern for me? Well, since joining this lovely leafy institution, St Mary's, my understanding is that my influence and so-called power with students was immense at the time, but becomes even more far-reaching now, because potentially I teach every student in the year group. 150 students last year left. They now presumably have 30 children, so the influence now is sort of 1,500 children that they're teaching. And what I don't want to do now is, in sort of Chomsky's term, is socialise and replicate the socialisation that I've been through, and hopefully we can break this socialisation. So I'm looking hopefully to engage the students to think critically and reflectively about their learning and what they see as what education is. And I quite like sort of Foucault's term of me being a conduit of power, and it is only sort of when stepping back realised that I was part of that power struggle, or not power struggle, but that passage of power about what is education and what is knowledge, and sort of while I wasn't wielding it directly or knowingly, I could see now that's how I can pass that power of knowledge through to my students. So that's my concern. I've undertaken an action research inquiry with a sort of overarching question about how I improve my practice. I do have sort of issues with the fact that the students here do have to get to grips, because of the national curriculum, with a vast amount of propositional science and knowledge, and I needed to think about how I encouraged the students that I'm working with to go about gaining this knowledge. So my actual research question is, how do I encourage independent learning amongst my students? So hopefully what you'll be seeing is that from the little test we did there, hopefully I'm moving from knowledge transfer to knowledge generation with this sort of question here. So my values underpin my teaching, my philosophy around education, so I'd like to share those with you. Mutual respect and equality, and very much a passion for my subject. So what I would do, and I ask you as my critical friends, is that do you feel through my inquiry at the end of this presentation whether I've realised those values, and hopefully when we go through this I'll be pointing the areas where I think I've realised and give you the evidence for that. I hope you're all nodding then. So what did I do? I realised that we had this vast knowledge, this sort of vast amount of stuff that we need to learn in science, and I wanted to think about how they could go about getting that knowledge without necessarily just for me being placed as the expert knower. So for the whole of year one on the BA ITT course, I produced a needs analysis, and this was for them to go away. There's about 50 boxes, quite a large number of boxes, because there's quite a lot of knowledge the national curriculum says they need to know, and they were broken into statements. So can you explain how animals and plants are dependent on each other? Now, this was tied to an assignment, so we did need to have evidence, and in some senses I think this was a good thing, because it made them think about what their evidence was. Now, they didn't necessarily have to replicate their evidence for me, because this was very much a personal thing for them. So their evidence could be just that they covered it in their GCSEs, it could be that they covered it in lecture notes, it could be that they wrote in there actually what the answer to that question was. It really was up to them, so it could be personal for them, so it could be independent. And how did I collect my data? Well, I chose two of the groups as I teach, and I each gave them questionnaires surrounding the needs analysis, and I also had 5 interviews with students from those. So to give you just a sort of quick sort of idea about the things that I asked them, I wanted them to rate their enthusiasm. We'll come on to why enthusiasm I think is important for independent learning. at the start of the course. This gave me some numerical data and then got some qualitative data from them giving me the reasons for that. Then obviously wanted to see how the enthusiasm for science had changed and the reasons for that, and then how valuable they found the needs analysis and whether it helped them to work independently. There were other questions, but those were the main questions that I pulled to generate my evidence. So, evidence generated from my data, I suppose the big thing is, did it encourage independent learning? And the bottom line to that is yes. The students, all bar two, said that the needs analysis had encouraged them to work independently. And I took some quotes just to sort of give you some quantitative data about this. I had to research and answer myself. I wasn't just given them by a teacher. It has helped me to develop strategies in working by myself. All those, I think, you'll agree, are to do with independent learning. Then I needed to look at my practice as well about, did I provide an environment where independent learning could be encouraged? And the environment I used as a big umbrella and research by Porkini and Porkini, I think I got that right, suggests two things. At least two things need to be in place. First of all, there's a supportive learning environment. And I think this ties in nicely with my values of mutual respect and equality. So if I've provided a supportive learning environment, I think hopefully I've realised my values about mutual respect and equality. And the sort of quotes that I was getting, that there was a good rapport between students and teachers, even though they're still placing me as the expert knower. Everyone was involved and all could contribute. But for me, this is the quote that I was looking for. And I would certainly hope those fulfil and realise my values about never feeling embarrassed to ask a question. So the second thing that the research shows is that students need to have enthusiasm. If they need to become independent learners, not only do they need this supportive learning environment, but they have to have enthusiasm for the subjects. And again, this was shown numerically by the questions about whether their enthusiasm or attitude had changed towards science. And across the year group, because I used that in evaluations as well, there was only 2 out of 60 who said their enthusiasm hadn't changed. For me, on a personal note, this equates to the passion for my subject, and if I have a look at those quotes, I think therefore I'm realising my passion for my subject, and hopefully the students are picking up on that. Now, some slight concerns came through from my data, because this actually was a very positive comment. It forced me to study areas I wouldn't have normally, but I'm a bit worried about this word forced. I think if independent learning is to take place, then the student needs to be taking this on board and feeling no coercion from me or anyone else. And it was highlighted by the fact that over half of the students said if it hadn't been part of the assignment, they wouldn't have done it. So there are issues around whether students are willing to engage in that. This was only from one student who said, I feel there should be more lecturer input because I've paid for the course. And there is research around that saying that is what a lot of students expect when they come. And again, this may not seem like a concern. I got a lot of people saying I really enjoyed the sessions. Now I think this is more to do with my questionnaire, really, rather than anything else. It's not that I don't want people to enjoy the sessions, but if that's their only statement about the course, I'm worried that there might not be learning going on. So I think that's somewhere which I need to develop in my search, to look at where I take that from there. Evidence of my learning. Well, I hope this has come from the sort of presentation, really, because I'd say my learning is going about how I teach, moving from knowledge transfer to knowledge generation. The data that I've used have been master's modules and how I used to think, and also we're speaking to colleagues about how my views have changed as I've been here for the last 2 years.